Lewis dead center, kept it right there from 42. Missed it! And the Huskies survive!
I know I say this all the time, but I swear every week gets better and better. As we get deeper in the season, these teams are finally showing who they actually are. We know exactly who's really good and who isn't, other than a few teams I'll mention in this video. But before we get into that, I'm going to show you guys my top 25, what changed, and why I put these teams where I put them. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so here's my top 25. As you can see, I got Michigan number 1, staying overall. Just like last week, Georgia number 2, Ohio State 3, Washington 4, Florida State 5. That's the top 5. And then looking at the back end, we have a lot of change. I'm going to get right into it, but we're going to start off with Michigan. They won their game against Indiana 52-7. They were losing in the first quarter 7-0, but Michigan fashion, they always come back, especially the second half. They usually turn it on and score a lot of points. And another thing I find weird about Michigan, they force so many tough decisions for teams where they could turn the ball over on downs, or if it's a fumble, interception, just stuff like that. Because if you guys look at the box score, they do not get a lot of yards, but they score a lot of points just because of that. This team is really solid. It's the number 1 team in the country still, and there's really not that much else to say about it. And then moving on to number 2, Georgia, they play Vanderbilt. They won that game 37-20. Not a great performance by Georgia overall. Brock Bowers did get hurt in this game. I hope he comes back. He's one of the best players in college football. Georgia going back to their old ways. They played 1 week against Kentucky where they showed that that is the team that they've been the last couple of years, and every other game they have flopped. So they're staying in the second spot for me because of that inconsistency. And then moving on, at number 3, I have Ohio State still. They beat Purdue 41-7. I was looking up the injuries on this game, and they had a lot of people out. Like the first 3 running backs were out, so they're like running a wide receiver and another running back, like the 4th on the depth chart, and their second best wide receiver was out or something. So they're really banged up, and I actually watched a lot of this game. Ohio State's defense played very well. Honestly, they pitched a shutout. The only reason Purdue scored in this game was because Ohio State's quarterback Kyle McCord fumbled the ball at like the 15 or 10 yard line, and Purdue scored off that. Now Purdue did miss 3 field goals in this game, so the scoreboard could have been very different, but Ohio State played very well, especially on the road. They left a few points off the board as well with fumbles, drop passes. I swear to you guys, there was like 8 to 10 drop passes in this game. I feel so bad for the quarterback, but we're not going to get into that. And then moving on, we have Washington. Washington, such an amazing game against Oregon. Oregon missing on that game-tying field goal, just heartbreaking for that team. Oregon really looked like they were the better team in the majority of this game, all the way up until the end. When they went for it on that 4th down at midfield and didn't get it, I knew Washington was going to score, and I honestly thought Oregon would come down the field and score again. But they halted at like the 30-yard line, and then that long field goal, just missing it. Such a great game. I feel bad for Oregon fans, but I only dropped you guys to 10. You guys very much still have a chance to reach the playoff, win every other game, and then rematch Washington or whoever else makes it to the championship game, and you're in the playoff. And honestly, another thing I took away from this game, Michael Penix Jr. is winning the Heisman. He is the front runner right now, especially after Caleb Williams' terrible performance. Bo Nix is still in the running, but they won this game. He threw 4 touchdowns. He is the front runner, and honestly, I think it's between him and Bo Nix at this point. Then moving on, at number 5, I have Florida State. Florida State beat Syracuse today 41-3. They absolutely pounded them. Not a lot to talk about. They played a really good game start to end. It was never close. I know Syracuse has been playing good, but they play good for half the season, and the other half they lose like every single game. But I'm really starting to like this Florida State team. It's really starting to look like that they're not going to lose a game until the ACC championship, which is kind of crazy to say. And right after them, I have Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma and Florida State, they're kind of mixed matched. I kind of believe they're both at 5, if that makes any sense. So putting them at 6 or Florida State at 6, it's kind of interchangeable for me. They had a bye week. And after them, I had Penn State. They played UMass, a little game before Ohio State so they can warm up. 63-0, they absolutely destroyed them, returned 2 punts for touchdowns, which is kind of crazy. Cannot wait for that game in Columbus. It's going to be one of the best of the year for sure. Next at the 8th spot, I have Texas. They're on a bye week, and at number 9 is where I moved Oregon. Since they only lost by 3 off that field goal and a couple of crappy calls by their coach at the end, I only decided to move them down 1, I think. And then rounding out the top 10, I have North Carolina. Welcome to the top 10. They beat Miami 41-31 at home. And the only things I have to say about this game is Drake May, Omarion Hampton, and Des Walker. Those 3 are the reason this team is really good, and it's the reason they won this game. Now, this is the first game that Des Walker played. He had 3 touchdowns, 132 yards. He just got cleared from the NCAA for eligibility, and he comes out and does this. Absolutely amazing. And Hampton rushed for 200 yards. Drake May threw 4 touchdowns. This team is a problem. They are weak in the secondary, but they've been weak in the secondary for years. That's how North Carolina is, but they are strong everywhere else. But honestly, if they want to go further than where they're at now, they cannot let up 400 yards passing against Tyler Van Dyke. He had 4 touchdowns as well, but 2 interceptions. Overall, it was a great game, but UNC deserves the 10th spot. And then right behind them, I have Alabama. They won their game at home against Arkansas 24-21. Now, it's really odd because Alabama's winning 21-6 at halftime, and then they get outscored 15-3 in the second half. And all I'm going to say is Jalen Milroe, this guy only knows how to throw a good deep ball. Every other pass he throws is god awful, but he can throw the deep ball amazingly. So if a team has a really good secondary, this team is just not going to win. Arkansas completely shut them down in the second half, and it was working. Everything they were doing was working. Arkansas really isn't a good team, but they keep losing by like 3 points every single week. They could easily have 5 or 6 wins right now, which is just really crazy to say. I thought Alabama was turning a corner, but obviously they're not. They're kind of the same, so they're staying at 11 for the 3rd or 4th week in a row for me. And right behind them, I have Oregon State. Oregon State beat UCLA 36-24. Their defense is really good. I know it kind of got throttled against California last week, but it's looking really good, especially against a good UCLA offense. They do have a true freshman quarterback, which he struggled in this game. He threw 3 interceptions, had a terrible completion percentage, but that's what's going to happen with new quarterbacks against good defenses, especially on the road. Then moving into the 13th spot, I have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They beat USC 48-20. Absolutely crazy. 3 interceptions by Caleb Williams in the first half, and then 2 fumbles by USC in the second half. Every single turnover equated for points for Notre Dame. This game would have been completely different if they didn't turn the ball over, but 5 against a really good defense and a decent team overall, you're not going to win. I don't care what team you are. You're not going to win turning the ball over 5 times. And to make it that much crazier, USC had 10 more first downs than Notre Dame did and 51 more yards. Absolutely insane. And their time of possession, they had 9 more minutes than Notre Dame. And that's honestly because of all the turnovers, so Notre Dame wasn't able to take clock off. But besides the point, this is not a disciplined football team. Their secondary is still bad. This is the first really good team that they played, and they lost. And I think they're going to lose 1 or 2 more going forward, especially against Oregon and Washington. I believe they're going to lose both those games, which is scary for USC fans. Then next at the 14th spot, I have Ole Miss. They were on a bye week, and rounding out my top 15, I have Utah. Utah beat California today 34-14, 317 yards rushing. Sion Vaki and Jackson equating for most of those yards. Running the ball like this, they're going to win a lot of games. Their offensive line played so good against this California D-line. It's absolutely insane. And then when Cam Rising actually does come back, this is going to be a scary team. We don't know when he's going to come back, but when he does, this Utah team is going to be very, very good. And then moving on to the 16th spot, we have the Tennessee Volunteers. They had their checkerboard night, or whatever the hell they call it, against Texas A&M, and they won 20-13. This was a pretty bad game for Tennessee standards, to be honest. I know that Texas A&M has a good defense, but looking at Milton's numbers, it's just awful. 50% completion percentage, 100 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception is not good enough. Now, Jalen Wright, he ran for 136 yards. Tennessee itself ran for 232 yards, which is really good. But without a decent quarterback, they're not going to go far. They're definitely not beating Georgia. They're definitely not beating Alabama. Like, Tennessee has taken a very, very big step back from last year. I'm sorry, Tennessee fans. It's just the truth. You guys are way different without Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, and Cedric Tillman. It is what it is. Then moving up to the 17th spot, we have Duke. Now, they beat North Carolina State 24-3 with their backup quarterback. It's really sad to think about Riley Leonard, their starting quarterback, being hurt, because this team is really good when he plays, and you can tell Duke is not going to be good without him. If he does not come back soon, they're going to lose a couple more games, and I really feel bad for this team because they have a good shot to going far in the ACC. But all we could do is hope that Riley Leonard comes back. Then after Duke at the 18th spot, I do have USC. This is where they dropped. I do think that they should be above LSU since they have 2 losses, because they have one up till now. But this team is just not where they need to be to compete at all. Right behind them, I have LSU, like I was talking about. They throttled Auburn today, 48-18, and this makes me question, why was Georgia in such a close game with Auburn when this offense is this bad? It's absolutely crazy. LSU has a terrible defense, and Auburn was only able to muster up 18 points. They scored 20 against Georgia. It makes no sense. I'm sorry, I kind of went on a little rant, but it needed to be said. Then moving up to finish out my top 20 is Air Force. They beat Wyoming today 34-27. This team is a pretty good team. I ranked them in my last video. A couple people had some comments to say about that, but this is a good team. They beat a good Wyoming team, which I should have ranked, but I didn't, just because I think Wyoming could have played better in a couple of their other games. But I knew this game would be the deciding factor if they were ranked or not, regardless. And in Air Force fashion, they rushed for 356 yards and played decent defense against this team. And they're 6-0. This is a really good team, and they deserve their props. And then behind them is another team that deserves their props also, an undefeated team, James Madison. I also had them ranked in my last video. They beat a decent Georgia Southern team that's only lost is to Wisconsin, and they played very well against every other team they played. And not only did they beat them down. It was 41-13. Jordan McLeod had 260 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and even though Georgia Southern had over 300 yards passing against them, they threw 3 interceptions, and that was the game. James Madison, I think they have a good defense overall. They're a solid overall team. They deserve to be in the top 25, so I have them at the 21 spot. And next after them, I have Missouri sitting at the 22nd spot. I really didn't want to put Missouri this high because I don't think they're that good, but Kentucky is just so sad, especially their quarterback, Devin Leary. He is not good at all. He came from NC State. Everyone thought that he'd be a decent quarterback for them. He's not. He is basically what Cade McNamara is for Iowa. It might not be that bad, but he's along those lines. They can only run the ball. That is all they can do, realistically. Ray Davis is a good running back, but that's all they bring. Missouri, they're a decent team, but looking at their strength of record and looking at the teams they've won against and the only team that they've lost to, LSU, they deserve to be in the top 25, even though I don't think they're a top 25 team. At 23 is where I put Louisville after their loss to Pittsburgh at home, 38-21. I don't know what's wrong with this team. They just beat Notre Dame. They looked very good in that game overall. They dominated the Fighting Irish from start to end. Their defense looked ridiculous in that game, and it's just completely different. I'm guessing it was off the emotion of the big night, playing at home at night, that carried them to that win, because obviously they're not very good if they're losing to 1-4 Pittsburgh. Not gonna lie. And it was just a complete 180 for this team in general. I was pretty high on them. A lot of other people were really high on them, but they're not the best. So that being said, moving on, at the 24th spot, we have a new team. Tulane is coming back in the top 25. They beat Memphis, a 4-1 Memphis team, or 5-1, either of the two, I don't remember. 31-21, and if anyone forgot, this team only lost to Ole Miss, and it was by hairs with their second string quarterback. They're definitely a top 25 team. If you just watch them play, their quarterback Pratt is really good, and I think they have a solid future going forward in the season. Then running on my top 25, I have the no offense Iowa Hawkeyes. I actually read something somewhere, I think it was on Twitter. Iowa had 3 offensive yards in the last 6 drives or something like that they had, and that's just hilarious to me. And they still win games. They won 15-6 over Wisconsin at Wisconsin. It's absolutely crazy how they win these games but produce no offense whatsoever. Their defense carries them. Imagine if this team had a good offense, or even just a decent offense. They'd probably win 12 games and go to the Big Ten championship in that division every single year. Now, they were able to run in this game. They had 200 yards rushing. LaShawn Williams had 174 of that, so at least they were able to do it. But 37 passing yards, that's just not going to get it done. 15 points is not going to get it done. But anyway, I think because of their defense, they are a top 25 team, so I have them back inside my top 25. And that rounds it out for me, guys. I did want to talk about another game that happened, which is the Colorado game. Oh my god, with Stanford having a 29-point lead at halftime and blowing that at the end is absolutely insane. And to lose that game 46-43 at home after having that lead is so crazy. I cannot understand why Deion Sanders didn't have his team ready to play, ready to win that game. Why weren't they in a better position? They were discombobulated. They didn't know what they were doing. All the offensive play calling was terrible. The guys really seemed like they didn't even want to play anymore. It was just really wild to see them change that much in one half of football. And that's all I really have to say. That's the end of the video. Let me know if you guys liked it by leaving a like and a comment in the comment section below. And until next time, peace.